Welcome to the Nick and Matt Show. Bringing the player interviews you want to hear and the hot topics you want to discuss. Streaming live on the Foundation Podcast YouTube channel, here's Nick and Matt.
You averaged, Sarah, 981 over 3 rounds. You shot your hot round. You shot the hot round, I should say, round 2 and round 3. And you bested second place by 8 strokes. So can you tell us, how does this one feel? What do you think was the reason for this weekend's high-level performance?
You know what? I really don't even know. I feel like the course, it was kind of like an old school course in that we were playing the gold layout, the same layout as the guys. Even though they gave us 3 more pars on a couple of the tweeners for the men, they gave us a par higher. So like half the holes were like not scoreable. So I'm really accustomed to that kind of golf from my early years in the FPO division before they started giving us better layouts. So I think I have a little bit of an advantage there because it's really, I know not to take any risks off the tee. The reward is not there on a lot of holes to take a risk. So my drives have felt really solid over the last month or so. So it really just executing relatively simple shots and then putting my approaches really close to the basket. That the wind was really bad the first day, and I didn't put my approaches close to the basket, and my putting was completely ineffective in 20-mile-an-hour winds. Mm-hmm. So I really made an effort to make sure I was putting myself on the tailwind side during the finals or right next to the basket. So that slight adjustment was really helpful, and I'm kind of surprised. Like I expected to be battling a little bit more with the field out there.
Do you kind of elaborated this on just a second ago, but the higher pars that sometimes the tour gives you for the FPO division, different holes are parred higher. Do you like playing the long tees in a sense, or would you rather a mixed layout between, like they kind of change up the layout for the FPO division?
I just want the layout to be optimized for the way women throw, right? Okay. Like it doesn't matter to me whether they're short tees, long tees, shorter basket, same basket. Is if the holes play well for the women, as in we can actually play golf and there are scoring opportunities, there is risk reward. You have to make decisions rather than just throwing as far as you can and then chipping up and tapping out a putt. I mean, that's really boring golf, which we did on half the course out there. So I definitely prefer optimization for the FPO division in all cases, and that can be done in a variety of ways.
Is there a specific course that you could relate the most where, like, let's say 2 years ago, it was kind of like a crap course for the FPO division to play, but then now it's a great course for the FPO division? Like one of the courses that I can think of, obviously being a Massachusetts native, is Maple Hill built the diamond layout in a sense of this was supposed to be the FPO gold level layout for the MVP Open. Are there any other courses like that people might know of?
Well, that's funny you bring that up because Steve Dodge at Maple Hill was one of the first people to start giving women a different layout, even prior to the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Now basically mandating that the FPO be considered when they're deciding on course layout. So yeah, Maple Hill has done a great job of that. I mean, it really came from them wanting to extend hole 8 to be like a 350-foot water carry or a 300 and something foot water carry. And Steve was like, well, that's not really fair, for the FPO division. And so we'll keep them at the original tee. And then he started looking at other tees like, oh, well, this one also isn't that great for the women. So maybe we can do something here. And it just like slowly evolved. And he was the first one that really made me think like, this is the way it should be. Like this makes so much more sense, that something that we hadn't done in the past. And honestly, in the past, there wasn't as many FPOs to even necessarily warrant that kind of extra effort to make it good golf. But now we have so many more playing, and there's been much more focus on the FPO division. As far as different courses that have done a great job, I think Jonesboro does a really great job, but he's been doing that since the beginning. Even that first year, when I came out and practiced the course, I said something to him about, this course is playing too long on several of these holes. And he went out and installed tee pads like the next day. He gave us like 4 tee pads that first year that he hadn't planned on giving us just because, like he gets golf. He like models his courses after ball golf design ideas. So he totally understood. And I think, and since then he's optimized it even further. And I mean, he does a great job. And even, I think notoriously the Glass Blown Open hasn't done the best job at it. But even last year, they changed some of the pars and made the course more scoreable for the FPO division to make it more interesting, to make the competition tighter. And so I think they did a great job. And there's a lot of places that have been doing a great job at this. Yeah. And, nowadays I almost don't even have to say anything anymore. I think people are just naturally looking at the scoring and looking at the UDisc and thinking, okay, well, these 4 holes, we didn't get hardly any birdies, or we got no birdies. Like, what can we do next year to make it better? So it's really awesome that this is starting to happen.
That's cool. That's great that, FPO competitors who have been in the game for a while are starting to see that change happening, and that the FPO side of disc golf is obviously going in a positive direction when it comes to the tour, TDs, and everything like that. So kind of off that subject now, but going into the 2019 season, you had switched up your sponsorship. You went to MVP. And then in 2020, COVID obviously hit. So it was kind of like a rough year for everybody. But now that we're in 2021, we're back to the full swing, full disc golf season, hopefully. On a scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable are you, obviously, with the discs? I mean, you've had about, let's say, a year and a half, almost 2 years now to learn everything. Scale 1 to 10, how are you feeling about your game?
I would say, I'm never going to give myself a 10 because there's always things that you can do. But I would say, as far as like being comfortable with my disc selection, I would say like 8.5, 9. There's still a couple molds that I think I need to put in my bag. And then some of my molds I still need to learn a little bit better. But I do feel very confident, and I really love my lineup, and MVP has been just a wonderful supporter.
Awesome. So, Sarah, you're very well known for your sidearm throw. Okay. You've thrown big time shots when it matters most using the sidearm. But this past weekend, we saw some shots that impressed everyone when you threw backhand. It made features and highlight reels. How much have you been working on your backhand? How important do you feel it is to your future success?
So I've been actually working on my backhand for many years. But as you guys probably know, with certain skills that it takes a while for you to get comfortable using some of those skills in competition. So I've been working on my backhand since like 2010. But it's never really been, I've used it on like hyzers. I developed a hyzer that I could trust. It's one direction. It's a simple angle. Hyzer's like the first thing you throw when you're trying to learn. You accidentally just throw hyzer all the time. So it was kind of an easy shot to throw in the bag. And I've been throwing hyzers for a lot of years. But while COVID was happening, I had about 2.5 months where I decided that, I wasn't working. I didn't have a lot going on. So I thought that'd be the perfect opportunity for me to really kind of get my form down and be able to throw more angles with my backhand. And I worked out a couple of things that were causing me some issues in my reach back, and then kind of my focus on my hips. And I really started to be able to control the angle and the trajectory, which, so something clicked in my form. And now I feel like I can throw a lot of different angles, some of them not so well. And I still struggle with height, throwing up and down hills, some of those kind of secondary level skills that I'm hoping to continue to work through. But I just feel it's awesome to have so many options, and almost confusing sometimes.
Have you ever had, and I apologize if I'm missing this, have you ever had a featured or a highlight shot backhand before?
Probably not. They're not usually very good.
So. It was totally awesome. That's why I wanted to bring it up. I think it was fantastic to see with the level that the FPO division is bringing as of this year specifically. We've obviously seen very talented FPO over all the years, but this year the parity is so great. Do you feel like it's even more like important now than ever to keep refining that backhand?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's there's so many talented players in the FPO division right now. It's awesome to be able to battle with 10 other people instead of maybe 3 in the past. So yeah, it's given me extra motivation to make sure that I have all facets of the game solid. Also it's motivated me to work through my spin putt again. So now, I've got sidearm backhand, push putt, spin putt. I feel like I can do almost anything. Maybe backhand rollers are a little out of my out of my skill set yet, but maybe in a couple of years, maybe I'll be able to do that too. We'll see.
Nice. So 2008, is that when you started touring?
Basically, yeah. I wasn't quite touring there, but that's when I started playing pro and started kind of traveling within like 5 or 6 hours of my home base in St. Louis.
Okay. So we'll say 2008 is kind of when you became a lot more competitive with the FPO division of disc golf. You're obviously a well-known figure in it. You have multiple U.S. Women's Championships, and you're also a 2012 World Champion. So you've been playing, obviously, let's say competitively for about 13 years now. Where are you finding the motivation still week in and week out? Is it a drive to just consistently get better, or a drive to, win another world title? Where are you finding all the motivation to just keep doing this week in and week out?
I just love it. I love being on the road. I'm kind of a nomad at heart. So the traveling lifestyle really suits me, and the game itself, it's almost unmasterable. So until my body says no, I say yes.
Nice.
That's excellent.
Cool.
We'll have to get a t-shirt. There probably is a t-shirt out there that says that. So you have been vocal about growing the FPO division. Is this something you took on yourself originally, or are you operating in some official form or capacity with the Pro Tour or the PGA? How did this come to be? And is this just something that you are passionate about, or did somebody approach you about it? Is it a formal thing? Tell us more about where this came from.
I think I have a minor in women's studies, and I think I've always kind of experienced a little bit of inequity when it comes to, as a female athlete. I was an athlete in college, and alongside a lot of my male counterparts, who were deciding what professional teams they were going to be playing for. And I looked at my options as a female athlete, and there just weren't very many options anymore. And I've been an athlete my whole life, and now all of a sudden, even though I have, a degree in another field that I could easily pursue, I'm a competitor and I'm an athlete. And once I got out of college, I realized that was over. And so that's kind of the original kind of inequity that I experienced as a person. And then, as disc golf came along, I kind of jumped in both feet without realizing that financially it was a really bad move. When I first started touring, I see these women out there doing it, and I thought, okay, well, if they're doing it, I can try to do it. Yeah. And then I realized the levels of sponsorship, the level of payout, even the bonus structures, they were all way less than my male counterparts. So then, I'm just starting to experience these things, and then I'm playing courses that you're just completely outmatched on distance. And playing for par is the name of the game, and most of the women were over par, even winning the event. So I started to kind of see these issues as well. Like, how come we don't get to make decisions? How come our risk reward is so much different? And then Valerie Jenkins Doss now asked me if I wanted to be part of the women's committee for the PDGA. And I was like, yeah, I think I could do that. And then I started doing more research, and I did this talk for the women's symposium a couple of years ago, where I discussed some of the issues and some of my suggestions on what we could possibly do to kind of, make this a better sport for women. And from there, it just kind of continued to evolve. And it's been just a pleasure to try to make change. And I think that we've seen a ton of positive change, especially with, Val. She was the originator of the Women's Global event, which has pushed the women's game really far ahead into the future. I mean, before the Women's Global event, there'd be a couple women's events every year. And now we get, there's like 70 women's events that one weekend. So Yeah, I mean, it's just been a pleasure, really, to just see how things are going. I love to do research, so I have all these Excel spreadsheets of random information that I can use as data to kind of prove some of the points I'm trying to make. And yeah, I don't have an official capacity outside of being part of the women's committee. But and then, of course, Respect Her Game came about last fall, which I'm one of the founders there, and we're working to push kind of the language and kind of curb bullying, push the language in a positive direction, curb bullying, make sure women feel safe on the course. So yeah, it's really just been a pleasure to be a part of this positive change, and I think it's going to keep happening.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, the fans of this show are like, Matt, shut up now. Stop. Close your mouth. Don't say what you're going to say. No, I'm kidding. For what it's worth, I actually totally appreciate and respect the way you present yourself in all forms of communication, whether it's social media or a formal release of some sort, whether it's Respect Her Game. When I see your name pop up, I know I'm going to get something that's well thought out and at least should be listened to. And so I just want you to know, from Nick and Matt show, we do appreciate that as well. Keep on doing that for sure.
Thank you. And one thing I do want to kind of say on that same point is there's so many great supporters of disc golf and women. And, like the Respect Her Game movement is really trying to be a positive force for the game. We're not trying to blame men. We're not trying to, we're not blaming anyone. We're really looking for allies. And I think it's really important with just the entire women's game that, like, a lot of men and sometimes some women don't experience the kinds of things that we do. And we're not asking them to totally understand, what happens. If you have never experienced some of the things that certain other people have, like, it's hard to put yourself in their shoes. But just being able to listen and just be open-minded to the fact that could be someone's experience is just really important to all of the people in kind of the women's leadership positions. We understand that it doesn't make sense in some ways, and doesn't apply universally to anything. But that, these personal experiences are this result of the environment that exists, and it's not anybody's fault, but that we can take steps to try to make it better. And that's what we're asking, and that's what we're pushing for. Yeah,
I really like the way you communicated that, for sure. I'm trying to think. I had something I was going to ask. Now I'm just like stalling. Of course we do this on a live show. But I want to. Here it is. Holly Finley this week made a social post asking for more FPO spots to open up. That is obviously I want to say a great problem. That's kind of cliche, but that's a great problem to have. Do you have any, if I was to give you, 1 minute to give your best insight on that, like how do you think this is going to be handled going forward? There's been talks of FPO, their own tour. There have been talks of separating days out through the week to have FPO specific so that can grow. In this year specifically, is there any opportunity? I think the Disc Golf Pro Tour generally does a good job with managing this. Have you had any opportunity to give insight there to Jeff Spring or anybody else? And do you have any insights of your own on how you might be able to expand the FPO division? And is it needed?
Well, it's definitely needed. I actually sent an email to Jeff Spring in the early part of the year, looking at all the registration dates, looking at the numbers that they were offering. And then I took a 10-year history of all the numbers that had occurred on every one of those tournaments, showing in the growth, and that, and recommending a certain number of spots be available to ensure that we are growing enough in the women's side of the sport. And he acted on those and all these TDs are doing the best that they can to get women more spots. I think that the real crux of the issue, though, is if we look at the percentages of women on the road that are playing the events versus regional women that end up playing in our field, compared to the number of men on the road touring and the number of regional pros that are able to play the events. So on the women's side, almost no regional pros get into these tournaments right now. It's almost completely tour women, right? So we've got like 95% of the tour of the women in the field are actually on the road full time trying to make a living at this. And guess what? 50% of the women get paid every week. On the men's side, we have probably 40 or 50 men on the road full time, but then we get, at least that many regional pros getting into the tournament. So, if the touring pros are doing their job, they're mostly getting paid, and it's a rare situation when they don't. But on the women's side, we don't have those 30 extra women in our division, like holding up the bottom end of the field, trying to see if they can make the cash. The touring women themselves are barely making the cash. So I think that that's the really big difference in the way the field sizes work out. And I get it that, the men are like, hey, I can't get into the tournament either, but for the most part, most of the men that aren't getting into the tournament is because of their rating, is they're not getting, they're not able to sign up in time. But for the women, our fields are closed before it's even in second tier. And it's only the touring women that are even getting in the tournaments. So that makes for a very cutthroat environment for the women, much more so than the men. And so, I think that the answer is that we continue to push towards more equitable numbers. So we continue to take spots from the MPO and give them to the FPO until we get to the point where the MPO are also experiencing these kinds of fields where everyone on tour is the only people that are getting into these tournaments. Like, you literally have to be on tour with a high enough rating in order to get into these tournaments, instead of welcoming all these regional pros to come and fill out the bottom of the field, or maybe fight for the cash when they're good enough that weekend. Because right now it's just, it's completely different for the women and the men, the way we experience the numbers and how it affects the way we are able to get paid out. So it's not something that a lot of men want to hear. And I get that. And I understand that it's difficult for registrations everywhere right now. However, if we're ever going to get to an equitable situation, that's the only way to do it. We can't handicap or handcuff the women's division just because.
Okay. Well, in this moment, we've lost connection, but it looks like it's reconnecting. So I do want to say,
we got you back.
I do want to say,
sorry about that.
That's okay. I do want to say that your opinion is valuable. Thank you for sharing that with us. I don't think it's the place right now with the amount of time we have and getting ready to bring Vinny in to debate it, but I think it's valuable, and our chat right now is actually enjoying the conversation as well. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to give one big shout out to actually a local guy in Massachusetts, Bob Kolchuk. He's running a big B tier, and it's slowly gotten bigger and bigger. But the first thing he did with it when he did the registration was only women could sign up for it. And they had, let's say, a month before registration open to everyone, that only female players were allowed to register. And so I think for B tier Massachusetts, it has one of the biggest turnouts ever for any female divisions in that area, whether it's FPO, FA1, FA2s, things like that. So shout out to Bob Kolchuk, awesome guy, ambassador for the sport and everything. And then just before we wrap it up completely, if you had 30 seconds to give a female player trying to get out onto the road and make the tour, what piece of advice would you give them?
I would say make sure you've dialed in every part of your game that needs to be dialed in, as well as, minimize your bills, find a travel partner, or reach out to some of the ladies on tour to help you out. It is a cutthroat environment, like as far as the way you can earn funds on the road, but everyone is also incredibly welcoming. So a lot of us will do whatever we can to help you. So, get that game dialed in first. Get your bills minimized, and then reach out to us on tour, and we'll do what we can to help.
Cool. And now 30 seconds of a shameless plug. Where can the people find you on the Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and all of that jazz? I'm
like the worst social media out there. It doesn't come natural to me. So, but I do try to recap all my tournaments on Instagram and also my Facebook page. So please follow me. It's Sarah Hokom on both of those platforms. And I also MVP just released 2 signature discs of mine, the Cosmic Trace and the Neutron Crave. So there's a ton of retailers out there that have those. So please pick one of those up. They're great molds. You're going to love them.
Very cool. And then any other sponsors you want to give a shout out to before we head off?
Yeah, Paragon Disc Golf, Miles at Park Hill over there is a great resource for any kind of printing you need for your tournaments, whether that's apparel or tournament signage, or if you need your vehicle wrapped, you can do that too. right behind
Nice.
me. He did mine. And then also Zuka Inc. They have been a great supporter. And man, if I didn't have a cart, I would not be able to play. So it is like such an important part for me. It takes the weight off my back, transfers it to my legs, so I get a nice workout if I'm going up and down hills. But it doesn't actually inhibit my back or my shoulders. And then also mitten bags up in Michigan. She's really been helping me out keep my hands dry. So she does a great mix of the clay powder and the pellets, so they're like already ready to go. You don't even have to beat them in.
It's true.
Well, very, very, very fun to have you on the show. We will definitely have to have you on again, especially when it comes to talks about the FPO division and the future of that for the Disc Golf Pro Tour and the tour just in general in disc golf right now. So, Sarah, we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Have a great evening and good luck the rest of the season. All right.
Thanks.
Bye.